Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS MLB Tuesday. We got 15 games on the board, loaded slate. As far as the last few days, for me, everything's been great. Had a great Saturday, went 5-2 with some real nice plus money hits in there. Then Sunday, I only placed 3 bets, all plus money, all cashed, including a full unit bet on Texas at plus 140 against Baltimore at Sunday Night Baseball. That was great. As far as yesterday, Monday, I went 1-1. Did lose a few dollars because I had a full unit on Astros team total over, but I got Austin Gomber over out. So I ended up splitting on Monday. Tuesday, 15 games. Oh, by the way, live show, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go through every single game on the board. We got 4 WNBA and 15 MLB. So it'll be a loaded live show. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. 15 games. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
First up, we got the White Sox on the road in Cleveland. Guardians are minus 200 favorites at home. Total sitting at 9.5. Chris Flexen scheduled to be on the mound for the White Sox. Carlos Carrasco pitching for Cleveland. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got to lean on the Guardians through 5 innings, 3.34 to 2.85. Final score, definitely lean on Cleveland, 5.47 to 3.82. Before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers, and obviously heavily tilted towards Cleveland. Cleveland's got a plus 16.9% ROI on the season. White Sox, I believe, are still the least profitable team in baseball, minus 33.6%. And the fact that this game's in Cleveland is significant because the Guardians, I believe, have been the most profitable home team in baseball this year. At least they were as of a week ago. And the White Sox on the road have been, it's been a nightmare. Minus 49.4% ROI on the road. So if you've been betting the White Sox in their road games, you are down a fortune. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the White Sox bats. And as you probably would have guessed, it's a train wreck. In the last 30 days, this team's 25th in WRC+, 25th in OPS, 26th in WOBA. In the last 14 days, even worse than that. 28th, 29th, and 29th. As far as their numbers on the road, I mean, as we just talked about, this team's been terrible on the road. On the season, 29th and 29th and 29th. In the last 30 days, actually much better than that, but it's not enough of a sample size to really draw any conclusions from. Now, if we pull up their numbers against right-handed pitching, I guess you could make a case that the White Sox are slightly on the come-up. In the last 30 days, it's a bottom 5 lineup against righties. Same goes for the last 14 days, but in the last 7 days, 18th, 19th, and 19th. And those are elite numbers by Chicago White Sox standards. And check this out. The last 2 righty starters to pitch against the White Sox, 8.71 ERA and a 1.74 whip. They've gotten to back-to-back righty starters, and if we pull up the game logs, Cal Quantrill is one of them who's having a good season. They got 7 hits and 5 earned runs off him. I mean, he made it into the 6th inning, so it's not like they absolutely slammed him, but still, they were able to score runs on Cal Quantrill, who's having a great season. Before that, they crushed Dakota Hudson, so back-to-back righty starters for the White Sox. Before that, though, Gavin Stone threw a complete game shutout, so take it with a grain of salt. I will say, though, something we got to point out here, we're talking about Carlos Carrasco, and Carlos Carrasco, not a strikeout guy, just a 17.88% strikeout rate on the season. Chicago's actually got decent-looking numbers against righties with a strikeout rate below 19%. 12th in ERA, 9th in WHIP. Those are pitcher numbers against them. So that's really not that bad. They've struggled against righties that are able to generate strikeouts. That's not Carrasco. And also, what else does Carrasco struggle with? Giving up the deep ball. Gives up home runs. And the White Sox against righties with a home run per 9 inning rate over 1.5. Look at this, top half of baseball. So look, I'm not saying I expect the White Sox to come out to score a bunch of runs, but there are a couple angles here that look pretty good for the White Sox bats. And again, I'm going to mention this. We're talking about Carlos Carrasco. On the season, he's got a 5.27 ERA and a 1.40 whip. Now, he has had back-to-back good starts, so let's give him some credit. 2.45 ERA and a 1.09 whip in his last 2 starts. His numbers at home this season actually haven't been great, though. On the season, he's got a 4.56 ERA and a 1.56 whip at home. His last 2 home starts, a 5.40 ERA. So Carrasco historically is a guy you like to back at home, but that hasn't been the case this season. And if we pull up Carrasco's recent game logs, hey, on the road in Baltimore, 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. You'll take that. I mean, he did allow 8 base runners, so they were getting to him, but that's not bad. Before that, a home start against Toronto. 6 innings, 1 earned run, just 4 hits. That's a great start. So yeah, the numbers weren't lying. Back-to-back starts where he was okay or even great in the Toronto start. Before that, there's some shaky looks there for Carlos Carrasco, though. We know he's not having the best season. Now, if you are looking to back Cleveland here, I have a couple things you might like. First off, Carrasco's got worse numbers against lefties. He's actually a slightly better splits against righties. The reason I'm bringing that up, Chicago, extremely righty-heavy lineup. 7 righties projected to be in the lineup for the White Sox, and Carrasco has just a 120 whip against righties this year, so you like that if you're backing Cleveland. Also, look at Carrasco's pitch mix. Throws the slider, the four-seam fastball, and the changeup. The White Sox against those 3 pitches in the last 30 days, dead last against the slider, 21st against the fastball, 27th against the changeup. So there's a couple angles there that look pretty good for Carrasco. Overall, I don't trust Carlos Carrasco this season at all. I do think the White Sox are going to get to him. Unfortunately, there's just not enough numbers here to make me really confident about that. So I do think the White Sox score on Carrasco, but I'm not overly confident about it. On the other side, we got the Cleveland Bats, and Cleveland's been great. In the last 30 days, top 10 lineup. Same goes to the last 14 days. In the last 7 days, maybe cooling a bit. 14th, 14th, and 15th. When we pull up their numbers at home, they've been great all year. On the season, this is a borderline top 10 lineup at home. Last 30 days, 11th, 13th, and 12th. In the last 14 days, top 5 at home. We know Cleveland's dangerous at home. Can't take that away from them. But then we pull up Cleveland's numbers against right-handed pitching, and this is where it gets a little interesting. In the last 30 days, 11th, 11th, 11th. But look at the last 7 days, 20th, 21st, and 21st. Cleveland showing signs of cooling off here. And check this out. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Guardians, 148 ERA and a 103 whip. This is especially, well, first of all, those numbers are excellent, but this is especially crazy because if you rewind a week, we were talking about how the Guardians were smashing every single righty starter they saw. They saw like 9 or 10 righty starters in a row that they crushed. Now the last 4 have given them problems. If we pull up the game logs, Seth Lugo, 6 shutout innings. Alec Marsh, 6 innings, just 1 earned run, just 6 base runners. Michael Wacha was able to pitch a decent game against Cleveland. Grayson Rodriguez, excellent game against Cleveland. 7 innings, just 2 earned runs, just 5 hits. So 4 righty starters in a row were able to blank this Cleveland lineup. So there's definitely enough evidence here for us to say this Cleveland lineup might be cooling off against righties. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about Chris Flexen, and we know Chris Flexen hasn't been that reliable this year. 5.13 ERA, 5.01 expected FIP on the season. In the last 3 starts, even slightly worse than that. 5.40 ERA and a 1.87 whip in his last 3 starts. His numbers on the road, his last 4 road starts, he's got a 6.38 ERA, 4.05 expected FIP, indicates he had some bad luck, but yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in Flexen. There was a stretch there when he was with Seattle where I kind of like Flexen and I made some money betting him, but I haven't trusted this guy in a long time. Here are his game logs. We can point at the fact that he does have a really nice home start there against Houston. 6 innings pitched, just 1 earned run, 8 base runners. That's a great start for Flexen. There are a couple really rough starts in there. The Dodgers crushed him. The D-backs crushed him. But you know what? Before that, great home start against Boston. 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. And that was back when the Red Sox were hitting, too. Before that, great road start in Wrigley. Cubs suck, but still, that's a really good road start. 5 innings pitched, just 1 earned run. So Chris Flexen's numbers look pretty terrible, but when you actually pull up his game logs and look, it's really just 2 bad starts. The other 3 surrounding it, you could point at these and say, hey, 3 of Chris Flexen's last 5 starts have actually been good. Here's where it gets a little dicey for Chris Flexen. He's really struggled against lefty bats this year. 397 WOBA, 153 whip, 510 expected FIP against lefties. The reason that's such a concern, Cleveland might be the most lefty-heavy lineup in baseball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projected lefties in the lineup for the Guardians. So even though I do think Cleveland's cooling, I don't know if Chris Flexen is a righty I necessarily trust to add on to that. Also, pitch mix wise, Chris Flexen throws the 4-seam fastball and the cutter. Cleveland 5th and 14th in the last 30 days against those particular pitches. So I do think there's some sell high value on fading these Guardian bats, but I don't know if Chris Flexen making a road start against a bunch of lefties is the spot to do it. Not to mention the White Sox on the road in general have been a disaster, so really tough to make a prediction here. As far as the bullpen matchup, though, it gets interesting because if we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, it'd be like, oh, this is one of the best bullpens in baseball against one of the worst. But actually, if you isolate it to the last 14 days, the White Sox bullpen has actually been better than Cleveland's bullpen. White Sox have been a top 5 bullpen in the last 2 weeks, and Cleveland's bullpen has really fallen off. So the White Sox bullpen has actually been outperforming Cleveland. Small sample size, but still, it's got to take note of it. And as far as offenses against bullpens, look how cold the Guardians' bats have been in the late innings. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5, bottom 6 lineup in the late innings. And the White Sox, might be heating up a little bit. So in the late innings where we would expect Cleveland to have this huge advantage, I don't know if that's the case. So there's no way I'll bet the Guardians here. Not at this price, no way. But I don't know if plus 170 is enough for me to take a shot with the White Sox. So it'll be White Sox or pass, White Sox money line, White Sox plus 1.5. But Chicago on the road has been so disgusting that I don't think I could actually do it. Maybe a White Sox team total over, sneaky bet. It'll be White Sox plus 1.5, White Sox team total over. It'll be one of those. I'll let you know on the live show. If you're looking for a hitter prop or a Dinger Tuesday bet in this one, I'd look at Andrew Vaughn, man. He's got a 341 expected WOBA and a 7.3% barrel rate against righties with Carlos Carrasco's pitch mix. Solid numbers. Plus, in the last 4 games, he's hitting 500. 6 of 12 with a home run and 4 RBIs. The man's hot. He's seeing the ball. You guys know I'm not a big player prop guy, but Andrew Vaughn to hit a homer, I don't even think the odds are open. That's what I like. Cards on the road in Pittsburgh. Pirates are short home favorites here, minus 122. Total sitting at 8.5. Kyle Gibson on the mound for St. Louis. Mitch Keller pitching for the Pirates. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a very small lean on the Cardinals through 5 innings, 2.34 to 2.13, and a decent lean on the Cardinals' final score, 4.61 to 3.77 cards. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers on the season. These two teams pretty close. Cardinals minus 4.6% ROI this year. Pirates minus 7%. Pittsburgh's been slightly worse at home, minus 10.2%, and the Cardinals have been slightly better away from Busch Stadium. So really nothing there. Both these teams just below 0 ROI-wise. As far as the Cardinals' bats, I thought they were heating up. It's looking like that wasn't the case. In the last 30 days, 18th, 17th, 20th. In the last 7 days, this is a bottom 5, bottom 6 lineup in baseball. So Cardinals definitely seem to be cooling off a bit. This is also not a lineup we've been able to trust on the road all season. It's a bottom 10 lineup on the road this year, 22nd, 21st, and 22nd. So I don't like that they're on the road. Also against righties, again, I thought they were heating up, but last week or so, they've trended the complete opposite direction. In the last 7 days, they're 26th, 27th, and 27th against right-handed pitching. The last 3 righty starters to pitch against the Cardinals, 1.62 ERA and an 0.90 whip. So the last 3 righty starters have had no problems with this lineup. And if you pull up the game logs, it's not like they're seeing Cy Young candidates here. Hunter Green, Carson Spears, Frankie Montas. All 3 of those guys basically blanked this Cardinals lineup. So don't have a ton of faith in St. Louis bats right now. I'm sure they will come around at some point, but as of right now, they're probably on the fade list. So how do they match up against Mitch Keller? Well, he's pitched 18 innings against this team since the start of last season. He's got an even 4 ERA and a 1.39 whip. Not really much to go by there. Those are pretty average numbers. But Mitch Keller as a whole this season has been excellent. On the season, he's got a 3.20 ERA, a 1.22 whip. Last 7 starts, last 2 starts, he hasn't slowed down at all. He's been even better at home. On the season at home this year, 2.36 ERA, 1.09 whip. Last 6 home starts, last 3 home starts, even better than that. He's got a 0.46 ERA and an 0.97 whip in his last 3 starts at home. He's been almost untouchable in Pittsburgh. Here are his game logs, and you could see a couple road starts where he struggled. Actually, 2 of his last 3 starts were on the road, and he struggled in both of them. At Cincinnati, I'll give him a pass for that one because he always struggles in that ballpark. His numbers in Great American Ballpark are disastrous. But before that, his last road start struggled a bit against this Cardinals lineup. Now, it was on the road in Busch Stadium, which is important because the Cardinals are better at home and Mitch Keller is worse on the road. This game's in Pittsburgh, which should definitely help him. Also, if you take a look at that game, he let up 4 earned runs, allowed 8 hits, but no walks. Just 8 base runners and 6 innings pitched really isn't that bad. So that start looks a lot worse than it actually was. But before we change the graphic, look at his home starts here. Home against Cincinnati, 7 shutout innings. And by the way, the Reds are a top 5 road lineup this year. Before that, home against the Twins, who have been hot for a month, 6 shutout innings. They had 9 base runners, couldn't get 1 across. Before that, home against the Braves, 6 2/3 innings, just 1 earned run. So again, Mitch Keller at home in Pittsburgh has been almost untouchable. He's also got great numbers against lefty bats, 290 WOBA and a 107 whip against lefties this year. Cardinals projected to have 5 lefties in the lineup. I will say that 3 of their first 4 hitters are righties, so some of their most important pieces are true righty bats, but as a whole, those 5 lefties, especially those 3 lefties at the bottom of the lineup, should be outs for Mitch Keller. And pitch mix-wise, he throws the fastball and the slider. Those are his 2 main pitches. The Cardinals 22nd and 16th against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So as a whole, I don't see any reason to doubt Mitch Keller in this spot. He should pitch really well here. On the other side, we got the Pirate bats, though, and It's terrible, as we know. In the last 30 days, 27th, 27th, 27th. Hasn't even got much better. It's actually slightly worse in the last 14 days. At home, even worse than that. On the season, this is the second worst home lineup in baseball. In the last 30 days, they're even worse than that. 30th in WRC plus, 29th. This Pittsburgh lineup has been nothing to fear at home all season. I will say their numbers against right-handed pitching may be slightly on the come up. Let's see, in the last 30 days, bottom 7, bottom 8 lineup against righties, but in the last 7 days, 16th, 15th, 16th. Super small sample size, but it is something to take note of. And if you look at the righty starters, they've gotten to them. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Pirates, 6.97 ERA. So there's something there. If you're looking to back the Pirates, they have gotten to some righty starters. And if you look at the game logs and check out the names, 3 of the last 4. They got to Schwellenbach, they got to Graham Ashcraft, they got to Hunter Green. So 3 of the last 4 righty starters that pitch against the Pirates got hit up. I will say, though, little concerning to see in the middle of that, Charlie Morton, 6 1/3 shutout innings, just 4 base runners. So it's tough to trust the lineup against right-handed pitching that just got absolutely blanked by Charlie Morton, of all people. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this Pirates lineup, but I know some people have cashed on him this year. As far as their matchup against Kyle Gibson, he hasn't pitched against this Pirates team since May of last season. They got to him. 5 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks. So Pirates definitely gave Kyle Gibson some problems last year. I will say, last year Kyle Gibson was different than this year Kyle Gibson. He's having a great season. You could see on the season he's got a 3.70 ERA, 124 WHIP. Last 5 starts, last 3 starts, he hasn't slowed down. His numbers are even better on the road. On the season, Kyle Gibson's got a 2.68 ERA and an 0.98 WHIP on the road. And you look at his last 4 road starts, his last 2 road starts, hasn't slowed down at all. In fact, even slightly better. Kyle Gibson's been so good on the road this year. Here are his game logs, and look at his last road start. At Wrigley Field, 7 shutout innings. Before that, at Houston, they got to him a little bit, but they're the best home lineup in baseball this year, the Astros. Before that, at Cincinnati, 6 innings, just 1 earned run, 4 base runners. So there's definitely a pattern here. Kyle Gibson has definitely been really good on the road. Now, here's where it gets really concerning for Kyle Gibson. His splits against lefty bats. See, 340 WOBA and a 140 WHIP. Compared to his numbers against righties, that's not very good. He struggled with lefty bats. The reason that's particularly concerning, the 3 main pieces, well, 3 of the 4 main pieces in the Pirates lineup are lefties. All in a row, too. 2, 3, 4. Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, Rowdy Tellez. 3 lefties in a row in the heart of the Pirates order. So that's definitely not what I like to see as far as backing a pitcher that struggles with lefty bats. Pitch mix wise, though, smooth sailing for Kyle Gibson. He throws the sinker. That's his main pitch. Pirates have been terrible against that pitch. Pittsburgh hasn't really hit the slider either, which is his secondary pitch. So pitch mix wise is fine. Really, everything about this matchup looks fine for Kyle Gibson except those lefties. As far as the bullpen matchup, edge definitely goes to St. Louis. The last 30 days, the Cardinals have quietly been a top 5 bullpen, 6th in ERA, 4th in WOBA. Now, their expected FIP numbers indicate they've had some good luck, but still, they've been miles better than the Pirates bullpen. In the last 30 days, the Pirates are 24th in ERA, 23rd in WOBA, 25th in expected FIP. So no question, the Cardinals bullpen has been much better than the Pirates bullpen, and offensively against bullpens, again, you have to give it to the Cardinals. Not that the Cardinals bats have even been good in the late innings, but still, the Pirates in the end of games have been terrible. In the last 14 days, this is one of the worst lineups in baseball the Pirates are against opposing bullpens. So late innings edge definitely goes to Pittsburgh. If you're looking to play some hitter props in this one, I would say play Nootbaar. He's got great expected WOBA numbers against Mitch Keller's pitch mix, but he's not even with the team. He's in AAA right now, so you can't bet him. I mean, maybe Carpenter, but his barrel rate's low. As far as on the Pirates side, maybe look at O'Neill Cruz. I mean, but who isn't betting that guy? Really nothing here as far as hitting props, but there are the numbers for those who are interested. As far as betting this game, I might be down to fade the Cardinals bats in some way, but the market's kind of already on top of it. Their team total's all the way down to 3.5. You can't even get a good price on it. I do think Kyle Gibson's road numbers will eventually start to come back down to earth, but I really don't trust the Pittsburgh Pirate lineup. So I'll say Pirates first 5 run line or pass. I like Mitch Keller to deal. So Pirates first 5 run lines at plus 110, plus 105, somewhere in there. That's what I'll go with. Next up is Red Sox Marlins. I'm actually skipping this one because the Marlins pitcher, Bayozo, I really don't know anything about him. So there's very small chance I'm going to be betting this game. I'll listen to what Toast says on the live show because he's usually up on these newer pitchers. But personally, I don't know anything about him, so I'm skipping it. Next up, Mets are on the road in Washington. Nats are home dogs here, plus 110. Total sitting at 9.5. Lefty pitching matchup here. We got Sean Manaea pitching against DJ Herz. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a solid lean on the Mets through 5 innings, 2.98 to 2.12, and a solid lean on the Mets final score, 5.32 to 3.90. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the ROI numbers. Nats have been more profitable than the Mets this year, no question, but not recently. In the last 10 games, Washington's actually got a minus 40.8% ROI, and the Mets have obviously been red hot. They're arguably the hottest team in baseball. 12-3, I believe, in the last 15, 12-4 in the last 16, something like that. As far as the Mets on the road, they've been great recently, and they've been great all year. They're one of the most profitable road teams in baseball this year, plus 18.7% ROI on the road, plus 54.7% in their last 10 games. But Washington's been profitable as hell at home as well. In the last 10 games, plus 42.5% for the Nats. So both these teams have definitely been very profitable in these spots. Let's go ahead and get into the matchup, and we'll start with the Mets bats, and we got ones everywhere. Last 30 days, first in WRC+, first in OPS, first in WOBA. Same goes for the last 14 days, last 7 days, you name it, first for the Mets. As far as their numbers on the road, you guessed it, bunch of ones. First across the board in the full season, last 30 days, last 14 days. Mets are the hottest lineup in baseball, best numbers on the road as well. As far as their numbers against left-handed pitching, you guessed it. First across the board in the last 30 days, they've crushed lefties, and they've specifically crushed lefty starters. Holy shit, check this out. The last 2 lefty starters to pitch against the Mets, 18.78 ERA and a 3.26 whip. They've absolutely murdered lefty starters. And if you pull up the game logs, I mean, find me a starter on this list that the Mets didn't crush. You got to go back to June 11th, Jesus Luzardo, to find the last time a lefty starter pitched a good game against the Mets. Since then, they crushed Framber Valdez, crushed Imanaga. Actually, they didn't really crush Andrew Heaney. 3 runs in 6 innings pitched, but crushed Braxton Garrett. I mean, the Mets have been on a warpath lately. Righties, lefties, you name it, Mets got to them. Which brings us to DJ Herz. He's a rookie, by the way. This is his first season in the MLB. On the year, he's got a 5.48 ERA, 150 whip. His last 2 starts, his ERA is up at a 9.214 whip. I will say all his struggles have come on the road, though. His last 2 home starts, 1.74 ERA and an 0.77 whip, 2.08 expected FIP. So we're talking about back-to-back really good starts at home. But I kind of misspoke there because when I pulled up the game logs, it's really just one great home start. 6 shutout innings, just 1 hit against the Marlins. Before that is a start against the Braves, and that wasn't very good. 7 base runners, 2 earned runs, and just 4 1/3. So it's really one elite start against the Marlins, who might be the worst lineup in baseball against lefties. So as a whole, not the best looking resume here for DJ Herz. And you can see his first career start was actually against the Mets back on June 4th, and they absolutely smoked him. 9 base runners, 4 earned runs, and just 4 innings of work. So yes, it was his first career start, and he deserves a pass, but doesn't really look like he's taking steps forward, at least not yet. And if you pull up his splits against top 10 and bottom 10 lineups versus lefties, I mean, against top 10 lineups versus lefties, granted, it's only 8 1/3 innings pitched, super small sample size, but he's got a 6.48 ERA and a 1.92 whip. So really good lineups. I've had no problem with this guy, including the Mets. Pitch mix wise, it doesn't even get better for him. His main pitches are the 4-seam fastball and the changeup. The Mets are the best lineup in baseball against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days, first and first. So as far as making a prediction on this side, I mean, on paper, the Mets should score 5-6 runs easy off DJ Herz in the first few innings. Now, baseball games aren't played on paper, and this Mets team is bound to cool off at some point. But as far as numbers go, there's nothing here that points to DJ Herz throwing a good game. On the other side, we got the Nats bats, and these numbers are pretty ugly. Bottom 10 lineup in the last 30 days. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. Their numbers at home, even worse. This is a bottom 5, bottom 6 lineup at home this year. In the last 30 days, bottom 10 lineup. In the last 14 days, they're actually the worst home lineup in baseball. Super small sample size, though. As far as their numbers against lefties, I mean, last 30 days, bottom 5, bottom 6 numbers against left-handed pitching. Same goes for the last 14 days. The last 5 lefty starters to pitch against the Nats, 2.27 ERA and an 0.92 whip. So lefty starters have had no problems pitching against this Nats lineup. And if you pull up the game logs,
Seriously, can we find a single lefty starter that the Nats have gotten to? Kyle Freeland, 6 shutout innings. I mean, Luzardo, Trevor Rogers, Chris Sale, David Peterson, Max Fried, Christopher Sanchez. That's the 7 most recent lefty starters to pitch against the Nats. That goes all the way back to May 18th. They didn't get to a single one of them. So again, lefty starters have had no problem shutting this Washington lineup down, which brings us to Sean Manaea, who's having a great year. On the season, he's got a 3.89 ERA, 1.30 WHIP. His last 3 starts, 2.30 ERA, 1.09 WHIP, so he's been pitching good as of late. He's also been slightly better on the road, not much, but on the road this year, he's got a 3.16 ERA and a 1.21 WHIP, which are slightly better than his full season numbers. So he's been solid on the road, having a great year, Manaea. He's also been really dominant when he's gotten to pitch against bad lineups. He's thrown 22 innings pitched against bottom 10 lineups versus lefties this year. In those 22 innings pitched, he's got a 2.45 ERA and a 1.05 WHIP. So he's been great when he's pitched against bottom 10 lineups against lefties, which the Nationals definitely are. And here are his game logs. That start against Texas, by the way, isn't even that bad. Yeah, he gave up 3 earned runs, but he almost made it 6 full innings, and he only allowed 5 base runners. That's a solid start. And I mean, his last 3 starts have been solid. Yankees, Rangers, Padres, 3 solid starts. Before that, yes, he did get crushed by the Phillies and D-backs, but if you look at his game logs even deeper than that, it's really just those 2 games. Other than that, Sean Manaea has been reliable as hell. He does have a tendency to struggle against lefty bats, but the Nats are going to have 7 righties in the lineup for this one, so not a ton of lefties. I will say I'm worried about CJ Abrams, because CJ Abrams is a lefty that kills lefty pitchers. So if you're looking for a hitter prop, probably look at CJ Abrams. As far as this pitch mix goes, here's where you can find something for the Nats if you're looking to back Washington. 40% of Sean Manaea's pitches are sinkers. That's his main pitch by far. Nationals have been solid against that pitch all season. 4th on the season, 7th in the last 30 days. So there's something. His secondary pitch is the slider, though, and the Nats are 29th in the last 30 days against the slider. So as far as the matchup on that side, I don't see any reason to doubt Sean Manaea pitching a good game here. I mean, the Nats haven't touched a starter in damn near 2 months, so I think Sean Manaea should pitch well. As far as the bullpen matchup goes, I mean, I think I'd give the slight edge to Washington. Keep in mind, Edwin Diaz still not available, and the Nets bullpen is just the Mets bullpen has just been trending in the wrong direction since he got suspended. They were dominant, and then when he got suspended, it's kind of been a downhill sled. You can see in the last 14 days, the Mets are actually a bottom 10 bullpen. Not that the Nats bullpen is much better than that. 18th in ERA, 15th in WOBA in the last 14 days, but I'd still give the bullpen edge to Washington right now. But offensively against bullpens, no question, edge goes to New York. In the last 30 days, last 14 days, I mean, this is arguably the best lineup in baseball in the late innings. So it's pretty even in the late innings. Give the slight edge to the Mets, though, because of the bats. If you're looking for hitter props here, we can look at the Mets batters against DJ Hurst's pitch mix. And I mean, take your pick. JD Martinez, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso all have excellent expected WOBA and barrel rate numbers against DJ Hurst's pitch mix. So for maybe one of those guys' home run props, based on these numbers. On the other side, Lane Thomas, Nick Senzel, excellent numbers against Manaea's pitch mix. I said CJ Abrams earlier, but now that I'm looking at his numbers against this pitch mix, probably wouldn't be the best pick based on these numbers. So Lane Thomas has been a lefty killer all year, and so is Nick Senzel. As far as betting this game, you know I like Grimace. I'm not sure if I'm trying to lay the minus 135, though. And the Mets team total is all the way up at 4.5, juice to the over. Books are not giving us any more of those Mets team total over freebies. But it would only be Mets for me here. In my opinion, this is a really good game to keep an eye on the bullpen. Both of these bullpens are taxed. Guys are available for this game, but depending on how this game shakes out, there could be some really nice value jumping on a Wednesday game early. For example, if the Nats win a close one and use their main arms, jump on that Mets line early for Wednesday, or vice versa. If the Mets win this one and are forced to use their high leverage arms, jump on the Nats early for Wednesday. So it'll be Mets or pass for me here, but I'll definitely be watching this game. Keep an eye on the bullpen usage for Wednesday for sure. Next up, we got Cincinnati on the road in Yankee Stadium. Yanks pretty heavily favored at home in this one, minus 190, total sitting at 8.5. Graham Ashcraft is on the mound for the Reds. Luis Gil pitching for the Yanks. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a very slight lean on the Yankees after 5 innings, 3.0 to 2.93, but actually a slight lean on Cincinnati final score. That's just a testament to how bad the Yankees bullpen has been, and we'll get into that. But 5.1 to 4.87 Reds. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Yankees have been more profitable than Cincinnati this year, but starting to even out. I mean,
Yanks have been taking a bath recently in the last 10 games, minus 49.2% ROI for the Yankees. So if you've been betting the Yanks recently, you are taking some losses. As far as their numbers at home at Yankee Stadium, again, profitable on the season, plus 4.5%. In the last 10 games, minus 26.6%. Meanwhile, the Reds on the road have been a pretty solid bet. They're about an even ROI this year. So let's get into the matchup, and we'll start with the Reds bats. Trending in the wrong direction here. In the last 30 days, they're 14th in WRC+, 13th in OPS, 13th in WOBA. Last 14 days, last 7 days, definitely worse than that. As far as their numbers on the road, though, better. Early in this video, I said the Reds are a top 5 lineup on the road in the last 30 days. I was wrong, because in the last 30 days, they're top 10, not top 5. But no question, the Reds have been hitting on the road. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, it's tough to get a read, honestly, because it looked like they were going to start tagging righties for a second. But in the last 30 days, they're 20th, 13th, and 14th. In the last 14 days, they're back bottom 7, bottom 8 in baseball. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against them, 5.40 ERA, 155 whip. So they've gotten to righty starters, but then you look at the game logs, it's kind of weird here. So yeah, they tagged Sonny Gray. They crushed Miles Michaelis, got to Mitch Keller. But look at 2 of the last 3 righty starters they saw. They didn't touch Andre Palante. I mean, 7 base runners, but didn't get any runs home. And then Lance Lynn absolutely blanked this lineup. 6 shutout innings, just 3 base runners. So they couldn't touch Lance Lynn. So hard to draw any sort of conclusions about the current state of the Reds lineup. I mean, flip a coin at this point. They either get completely blanked by Lance Lynn or they go out and crush Miles Michaelis, who had been pitching really well. So tough to get a feel for this lineup. But they're matched up against Luis Gil, and this man has been in a tailspin. In his last 4 starts, he's got an 8.82 ERA, 196 whip. In his last 2 starts, an ERA above 19 and a 3.18 whip. Gil's definitely been struggling. As far as his numbers in Yankee Stadium, I mean, it's just one really bad start. You can see his last 3 home starts, 6.92 ERA. His last 1 home start was absolutely abysmal. And if you pull up the game logs and look at who he's pitching against, it starts to make more sense. So he saw the Dodgers, and he pitched pretty well in that game. He let up 3 earned runs, but just 6 base runners in 5 2/3. That's a solid start. After that, Boston was able to get to him. Just 1 run, but 8 base runners in 5 innings of work. And the 2 since then, he got tattooed. I mean, Baltimore hit this man into another planet. 10 base runners, 7 earned runs in less than 2 innings of work. And then after that, he went on the road to Citi Field. The Mets are crushing anybody. I mean, Grimace is on a rampage right now. So 8 base runners, 5 earned runs in less than 5 innings of work. So we're talking about back-to-back rock-bottom starts for Gil here. So the question we need to ask is this a potential bounce-back start for him against Cincinnati? And, man, your guess is as good as mine, because it's tough to draw any sort of conclusion from these numbers. You can look at some righty-lefty splits. Luis Gil, better numbers against right-handed bats. I mean, the Reds are somewhat righty-heavy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 righties in the lineup, but they're pretty split, and 2 of their most important bats are lefties, De La Cruz and Candelario. So, again, really tough to draw a conclusion there. As far as the pitch mix, again, tough to make any sort of judgment. I mean, fastball, changeup, slider, those are Gil's 3 main pitches. Reds 15th, 6th, and 14th. So pretty average, slightly above average. Tough to make any judgment there. As far as trying to make a prediction on this side, I mean, I do think this Reds lineup is going to come around. I definitely trust them more on the road, and I do think they can get to righty starters. But I was leaning towards a first 5 over in that Lance Lynn game, and they didn't touch him. Thank God I didn't bet it. So I don't know what to think about the Reds lineup. I think they do get to Gil, but I don't know how confident I am in that. On the other side, we got the Yankees bats, and the last 30 days, 11th, 11th, 11th. Last 14 days, last 7 days, looking pretty similar to that. Their numbers at home definitely trending in the wrong direction. On the season, they're 5th, 8th, and 6th at home. Those numbers definitely significantly worse than where they were 2-3 weeks ago. Last 40 days, last 14 days, definitely trending in the wrong direction. Their numbers against right-handed pitching look solid, though. Last 30 days, top 10 lineup against righties. Last 14 days, last 7 days, also top 10. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Yankees, 5.48 ERA and a 152 whip. So they've been getting to righty starters, but when you pull up the game logs, it's really just one start that's skewing the numbers here. They crushed Kevin Gausman, and I mean crushed this guy. 12 base runners, 7 earned runs, and 4 1/3. They crushed him. Before that, they didn't get to Chris Bassett at all, and they didn't get to Jose Barrios at all. So that game against Gausman, was that the Yankees lineup returning to form? Or was it just Kevin Gausman having a rock-bottom season, which we've seen a lot of this year? It's just one game. Tough to make a judgment. The good news for the Yankees is it's Graham Ashcraft pitching, and he is definitely trending in the wrong direction. On the season, 5.45 ERA and a 1.49 whip. Not absolutely terrible, but like I said, trending the wrong way. His last 4 starts, he's got an 8.53 ERA, 1.68 whip. Last 2 starts, an even 10 ERA. His numbers on the road are slightly better. So if you like Ashcraft, you can say, hey, this game's on the road, and he's been solid on the road this year. That's true. On the season, he's got a 3.70 ERA and a 1.33 whip on the road. Those are great numbers. Look at his last 6 starts, last 2 road starts. I mean, he's trending in the wrong direction here. Now, something you can point out for Ashcraft is you can point out his splits against top 10 and bottom 10 lineups. He's actually got somewhat better numbers against top 10 lineups. He's thrown 28 innings pitched this year against top 10 lineups versus righties. 4.82 ERA and a 1.32 whip, which are better than his numbers against bottom 10 lineups, which is that's vintage Graham Ashcraft there. Just a tough guy to read. So the Yankees are a top 10 lineup, so I guess that's a decent sign for Graham Ashcraft. Here are his game logs. I mean, Pirates crushed him. Rockies crushed him. Cubs crushed him. Dodgers twice in a row. Arizona twice in a row. He gets passes for those. Those are 2 lineups that we know are dangerous. Arizona's been killing righties, but the Cubs, the Rockies, and the Pirates, if you are struggling to get through innings against those 3 teams, how can I trust you in any situation? As far as righty-lefty splits here, nothing to really look at. Graham Ashcraft, pretty even numbers against both righties and lefties. Yankees are a righty-heavy lineup, but they are projected to have 4 lefties in the lineup for this one, so pretty balanced there. Nothing to take away. As far as the pitch mix, Yankees have hit his mix well. Cutter, slider, and sinker. That's what Graham Ashcraft throws. The Yankees are 11th, 12th, and 3rd against those pitches in the last 30 days. As far as making a prediction on this side, I mean, I do like that Graham Ashcraft has better numbers on the road. I do like that he's actually pitched well against good lineups. I like that, but there's no way I trust this dude making a road start in Yankee Stadium. Just no way. I would imagine the Yankees are able to score runs on him. As far as the bullpen matchup, this is where it gets interesting because you look at the bullpen numbers and you're like, oh, huge edge Cincinnati, which is true. In the last 30 days, the Reds have a top 10 bullpen, and the Yankees bullpen has been a disaster. They're actually a bottom 3 bullpen. The Yankees bullpen in the last 30 days, 29th in ERA, 29th in WOBA. They've been terrible, and the Reds bullpen, like I said, top 10. But then you pull up the offenses against bullpens, and it evens right back out because the Reds are just allergic to scoring runs in the late innings, and the Yankees have been a top 10 lineup in the late innings. So the Reds have the better bullpen, but the Yankees bats have been so much better at scoring runs against bullpens. I actually had a sneaky hitter prop I liked for this one. I was looking at Tyler Stevenson. He leads the team in expected WOBA and has a great barrel rate against righties with heels pitch mix, but he's actually away from the team right now on paternity leave. He's having a son, so he's not even going to be playing in this game, so nothing there. On the Yankee side, there's green everywhere. I mean, obviously, Judge, Soto, take your pick. Great numbers against Ashcraft's pitch mix. But as far as what I'm betting in this one, I like either the over at 8.5 or the Reds team total over 3.5. You can actually get the Reds team total over 3.5 at plus 100 right now. I think Heel is still getting overvalued. Yeah, the Reds didn't get to Lance Lynn, but this has been a solid road lineup for a month now. It's a lineup I think is going to start hitting right-handed pitching, so it'll be Reds team total over 3.5 for me here. Haven't bet this one yet, though. Next up, we got Houston on the road in Toronto. This one close to a pick'em. Jays are short home favorites here, minus 115. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Spencer Arrighetti pitching for the Stros, Jose Barrios pitching for Toronto. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a slight lean on the Jays after 5, 3.37 to 3.18. Final score, though, deadlocked. Models got this one at 5.52 to 5.52. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. Neither of these teams have been profitable on the season, minus 8.8% ROI to minus 13.1% ROI. But in the last 10 games, as I'm sure you've heard, Houston's been rolling, plus 62.4% ROI in their last 10. As far as their numbers on the road, again, Astros not profitable at all on the season, but in the last 5 games, they've definitely been profitable. Toronto has been profitable at home all year. Last 10 games, last 5 games. Toronto at home has not been a smart bet this year. So let's get into the matchup. Houston's bats look great. In the last 30 days, 6th in WRC+, 7th in OPS, 7th in WOBA. Last 14 days, last 7 days, pretty much flirting with top 5, top 10 across the board. As far as their numbers on the road, this is usually a concern for most of the year because the Astros lineup has been much better at home, but they've been hitting on the road. In the last 30 days, this is a top 10 road lineup, which is a great sign for Astros fans. As far as their numbers against righties, no problems at all. In the last 30 days, this is a borderline top 5 lineup against righties. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. Numbers look solid. The last 6 righty starters to pitch against the Astros, 6.62 ERA and a 150 whip. So they've been getting to righty starters. And when you pull up the game logs, I mean, yeah, you can question the quality of names, but Severino's pitched great this year. They got 4 earned runs off him. He was able to go 7 innings into the game, though. So that wasn't a shelling or anything. They crushed Meatball McGill, but Meatball McGill just got sent down to the minor leagues, I believe, earlier today. Ryan Feltner blanked the Astros. That's just crazy. Feltner's been terrible this year. But other than that, I mean, they got to Albert Suarez, who's been pretty good this year. Didn't get to Corbin Burns. Got to Grayson Rodriguez badly. And then didn't really get to Chris Flexen. So kind of mixed signals as I'm looking at these game logs. Tough to take anything away from that. As a whole, we know the Houston lineup is hitting, and we know they've been hitting righties. Which brings us to Jose Berrios. On the season, the numbers look fine. 3.37 ERA and a 1.11 whip. Last 10 starts, though, last 4 starts kind of trending in the wrong direction. 5.32 ERA and a 5.02 expected FIP in his last 4 starts. His numbers at home are better on the season. Again, great numbers. 2.39 ERA, 1.01 whip. But his last 6 home starts, last 3 home starts, trending in the wrong direction. Also, the expected FIP numbers are a little high here, indicating he's had some good luck to have these numbers. But then we look at his game logs, and this is where it starts to make a little sense. This dude, Jose Berrios, has been through the gauntlet. Look at his last 5 starts. Are you kidding me? Baltimore, one of the best lineup, if not the best lineups in baseball against righties. On the road in Milwaukee, which at the time, about a month ago, on the road in Milwaukee, if you were a righty, that was a danger. I mean, they were crushing righties and they were crushing the ball at home. That's a terrible spot if you're a righty starter. After that, back-to-back games against Cleveland. Are you kidding? Cleveland's been a top 5 lineup against righties all year. You got to pitch against them twice in 6 days. And then the Yankees, who, by the way, he pitched great against. So, look, I'm not a Jose Berrios apologist or anything. I'm just saying this dude's numbers are going to come back around. He was pitching really well this year. He's been through the gauntlet. There will be a buy low point for Jose Berrios. The question is that buy low point right here against the Astros, who are one of the hottest lineups in the league? I mean, this dude just can't catch a break. As far as righty-lefty splits, he's got slightly better numbers against lefties, and we know the Astros lineup is righty-heavy. But if you look at his splits, it's not significant. I mean, Wobo goes from 303 to 323. Whip 102 to 120. Nothing significant there. Nothing to take away from the righty-lefty splits. When we get to the pitch mix, though, this is where you can find some value on Berrios. So his main 2 pitches by far, sinker and the curveball, 32.8% and 30.9%. So those 2 pitches account for 64% of Jose Berrios' pitches. Houston in the last 30 days, they've been one of the hottest lineups in baseball, 16th and 20th against those 2 pitches. So there's a nice look if you plan on backing Toronto here. And also, Jose Berrios has pitched well against this team. As we know, Houston is one of the more dangerous lineups in baseball year in and year out. Well, Berrios has pitched against Houston 6 times since 2020. He's 3-1 with a 3.21 ERA, 1.04 whip. So he hasn't had problems with this lineup. Overall, on this side, I think Berrios is going to pitch well. I'm not thrilled with the idea of fading the Houston bats right now, especially when they just gave Altuve a rest earlier today, but I've been waiting for a buy low spot on Berrios, and I think it could be here. I think Berrios could pitch well here. On the other side, we got the Toronto bats, and is the Blue Jays offense coming to life? I mean, I know that sounds crazy to say. We just watched them lose 3-1, and they didn't score the run. The run they scored was a solo home run in the 9th inning. It was pretty much meaningless. It was a 3-0 game in the 9th inning. The Blue Jays hit a solo home run before losing. So I know it's tough to buy in on the Blue Jays bats after that, but as a whole, the numbers are trending in the right direction for Toronto. In the last 30 days, pretty average-looking numbers. Look at the last 14 days, the last 7 days. Last 7 days, Toronto's a top 5 lineup, believe it or not. Same goes for their numbers at home. I mean, again, these aren't excellent, but they're trending in the right direction. Slightly getting more and more green for the Blue Jays at home. As far as their numbers against righties, again, same thing, trending in the right direction. In the last 30 days, 16th, 20th, and 19th. Last 14 days, last 7 days, trending up. In fact, in the last 7 days, this is a top 10 lineup against righties. The last 7 righty starters to pitch against Toronto, 5.65 ERA and a 147 whip. So, okay, they've gotten to some righty starters. When you pull up the game logs, it certainly wasn't Garrett Cole.
5 innings pitched, 4 base runners, just 1 earned run, but they crushed Marcus Stroman, got to him badly. Before that was Cutter Crawford, and I believe that was the weather game, so we can disregard that one. They crushed Brian Bayo. They hit this dude into another dimension. Didn't really get to Tanner Houck, but crushed Tristan McKenzie before that. You know what, though? Who isn't crushing Tristan McKenzie? So I'm not going to throw him a parade for that one. But overall, definitely safe to say Toronto's bats are trending in the right direction. They've gotten to some righty starters here and there. So do we like the matchup for Spencer Arrighetti? Well, I mean, this dude has been so up and down, mostly down on the season. He's got a 5.68 ERA, 160 whip. But look at his last 9 starts. So we're talking about a decent sample size here. Last 9 starts, 433 and 140. So decent looking numbers for Arrighetti here in his last 9. As far as his numbers on the road, I mean, same thing. His last 5 road starts, 4.15 ERA, 154 whip. It's really not that bad at all. When you pull up his game logs, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some instances here where he got rocked, but 7 shutout innings against the Rockies, got crushed by the White Sox and Tigers, and you might be thinking, how do you get crushed by those 2 lineups? But then before that, pitched a great game against San Francisco, pitched a great game against Seattle on May 30th. So, I mean, we've seen Spencer Arrighetti pitch well. Overall, his numbers don't look great, and there's been times where he looked really bad, but there are times where we've seen him pitch well. Also, what has Spencer Arrighetti really struggled with this season? Lefty bats. 367 WOBA and a 179 whip against lefties this year. Really struggling to make outs against lefties. But we're talking about the Blue Jays here. This is a really righty-heavy lineup. Just 2 lefties in the lineup projected for the Blue Jays. Horwitz and Varsho. That's it. Other than that, he's going to be pitching to primarily righties here, which is a great sign if you're looking to back the Stros. Also, his pitch mix, 4-seam fastball and cutter. Those are his 2 main pitches, and the curveball. Those are his 3 main pitches. Toronto against those 3 pitches in the last 30 days, 19th, 24th, and 18th. So they've struggled to get to his pitch mix. I think Arrighetti could pitch well here. I do. I know the Blue Jays are trending in the right direction, but I like this matchup for Arrighetti. When we get to the bullpens, no question you got to give the edge to Houston. In the last 30 days, the Astros bullpen has been pretty mediocre. 15th in ERA, 18th in WOBA, 20th in expected FIP. But the Toronto bullpen's back in the bottom 5, bottom 10 of baseball. So Astros bullpen has definitely been better. As far as offenses against bullpens, I mean, you got to give the edge to the Astros. In the last 30 days, they're a top 5 lineup. Toronto's a bottom 3 lineup, but last 14 days, last 7 days, the Blue Jays have definitely done a better job scoring in the late innings. So it's closer than you think, but no question, late innings, edge goes to the Stros. As far as betting this game, I think this is a Toronto spot, man. Yes, they did struggle to get to Hunter Brown, but Hunter Brown's been excellent. He's been dealing recently. I don't even necessarily like the Blue Jays to get to Arrighetti, but in my opinion, I'm only going to need 2 off of Arrighetti to get my win here. I like Berrios to deal. And by the way, the Astros bats might be cooling. They barely touched Yariel Rodriguez this afternoon. I've been waiting for a spot to buy in on Berrios. I think this might be it. I like the first half under 4.5, but what I actually bet is Toronto first 5 money line at -114. I like Toronto to win this game also, but if they don't, this is another game to keep an eye on the bullpen. Houston's bullpen is definitely on the tack side, and if you see arms out there like Abreu, Presley, Montero, Scott, any of those 4 guys, or Hader, any of those 5 high leverage arms might be a good opportunity to grab Toronto money line on Wednesday as soon as it opens, because Houston's definitely going to be in a situation if they have to use a few of those arms. So Toronto first 5 money line for me. Next up is Giants Braves in Atlanta. I'm skipping this one, though. I don't know anything about this kid Birdsong pitching for the Giants, so we'll talk about this one on the live show. Maybe Toast can provide some insight on this kid, but I don't know anything about him. So I'm going to skip right over to Tigers Twins in Minnesota. Tigers are actually favored here on the road, -105 for the Twins at home. This actually just moved because the Twins were at +100 just about an hour ago, so moving towards Minnesota. Total sitting at 7.5. We got Tariq Skubal on the mound for the Tigers. Simeon Woods Richardson pitching for the Twins. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a lean on Minnesota through 5 innings, 2.9 to 2.35. We also got a big lean on Minnesota final score, 5.23 to 3.81. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Minnesota pretty much break even on the season, -2.2%. In the last 10 games, they're slightly above 0, +5.2%. Tigers have not been a profitable team to bet this year, -27.2% ROI in the last 10 games. Tigers have been a terrible team to bet on the road recently. In the last 10 games, -63.1%. Twins turning a slight profit recently in their last 10 home games, plus 9.5%. So let's get into the matchup, and we'll start with the Tigers bats. It's about as bad as you imagine, maybe even worse.
in the last 30 days. This team's 29th in WRC+, 29th in OPS and WOBA. In the last 14 days, dead last across the board. So the Detroit Bats have been ice cold. Their numbers on the road pretty much just as bad. This is a bottom 5 road lineup this year, bottom 3 road lineup in the last 30 days. So the Tigers are definitely not hitting on the road. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, it's, again, awful. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 3 lineup against righties. The worst lineup in baseball against righties in the last 14 days. They have gotten to a couple righty starters recently. When I say a couple, actually, I should say one. If you look at the last 3 righty starters against the Tigers, 6.43 ERA and a 150 whip. And you might be thinking, oh, nice, they're getting to righty starters. But then you pull up the game logs, and it's just one game. Jonathan Cannon, they crushed him. 5 earned runs, 7 hits, and a walk in just 1 inning. So that's skewing the numbers here. You know what? They also got the Griffin Canning a little bit. 8 base runners, 4 earned runs, but 8 base runners in 6 innings isn't that bad. He was able to go 6 innings into the game. And you can see, other than those 2, they didn't touch Nola, didn't touch Andrew Thorpe, didn't touch Eric Fetty, didn't touch... Well, actually, they didn't get to Eric Fetty. Didn't touch Reynaldo Lopez, didn't touch Spencer Schwellenbach. So, yeah, Tigers are not hitting, period. So that brings us to the question, will they hit off of Woods Richardson? Well, they already saw him back on April 13th at home in Detroit. They didn't touch him. It was actually his first start of the season, only his second career start. He went 6 innings, 1 earned run, 2 hits, and a walk. So just 3 base runners off this kid. That was back in April. So they didn't touch him earlier in the season. Woods Richardson as a whole is definitely trending in the wrong direction, though. His numbers on the season, 3.41 ERA and 114 whip, solid. Last 8 starts, about the same as that, but look at his last 3 starts. 5.28 ERA and a 4.88 expected FIP. You pull up the game logs. He struggled with Arizona a bit. He did pitch well in his last home start against a bad lineup, though. Tampa, a lineup that doesn't scare you against righties. He went 6 innings, just 2 earned runs, 6 base runners. So that's a solid start right there. So you might be thinking, oh, at home against a bad lineup, we can count on Woods Richardson. Well, 6 days before that, he got hit up by Oakland at home. So I don't know what to take away from this. You can see he shut down the Pirates, struggled on the road at Houston, but pitched great at home against the Royals. There are a few spots on here where the numbers look great, but also a couple spots where they look really shaky. As far as his pitch mix, though, it's a solid look if you're betting the Twins. He throws the 4-seam fastball and the slider. Those 2 pitches account for over 71% of his pitch mix. The Tigers against those 2 pitches, 28th and 25th in the last 30 days. So that's a solid look if you're trying to back the Twins. Overall on this side, I mean, I don't know how much I trust Woods Richardson, but I don't trust this Tigers lineup at all. I think they're one of the worst lineups in baseball, so I'm sure at home he's able to pitch fine. On the other side, we got the Twins lineup, and I'm sure you've already heard Minnesota's been hitting in the last 30 days. This is a top 3 lineup, top 5 in the last 14 days, top 10 in the last 7 days. So, okay, maybe trending in the wrong direction, but their numbers at home in the last 30 days, this is the best home lineup in baseball. Twins have definitely been hitting at home in Minnesota. As far as their numbers against left-handed pitching, again, elite. In the last 30 days, this is a top 2, top 3 lineup against lefties. Second. Really doesn't look like they're slowing down either. The last 4 lefty starters to pitch against the Twins, look at this. 19.06 ERA and a 3.88 whip. So they've absolutely slaughtered lefty starters when they've seen them. If you bring up the game logs, I mean, Montgomery crushed them. J.P. Sears, back-to-back starts, crushed him both times. Before that, Austin Gomber, who's actually having a pretty decent season, they crushed him. You got to go back to Carlos Rodon on June 5th to find the last time the Twins didn't get to a lefty starter, and that was like a month ago. That was back when the Twins weren't hitting. They've been one of the hottest lineups in baseball since then. So I have no reason to doubt this Twins lineup. I mean, I trust them against a righty or a lefty right now, but I certainly have no reason to doubt them against a lefty starter. But it is Skubal, one of the best lefties in the league, and he did blank this Twins team earlier in the year. April 12th, he pitched against the Twins. He went 5 shutout innings, just 4 base runners. So he shut the Twins down back in April. And in fact, he's actually shut the Twins down the last 3 times he's seen them. Dating back to last season, his last 3 starts against the Twins, 2-0, 17 innings pitched, 0 earned runs. So his last 3 starts against the Twins, he's allowed 0 runs, just 12 total base runners. So the Twins have not been able to touch Tariq Skubal the last 3 times they saw him. I will say the Twins right now are hitting better than I think I've ever seen the Twins hit. I mean, they are red hot, and they're crushing lefty starters. So if there was ever a time for the Twins to get to Skubal, it would probably be now. Speaking of Skubal, Cy Young type numbers, 2.32 ERA and an 0.94 whip on the season. Last 3 starts up at a 4.15 and a 1.15 whip. And if you pull up his road starts, last 2 road starts, 6.97 ERA and a 1.55 whip. maybe a little concerning, but when you look at his game logs, it's really just one game. I mean, on the road in Atlanta, they crushed him. 9 base runners, 4 earned runs in just 4 innings. Other than that, he's been solid. Yeah, you can point at that road start in Houston. They got 4 runs off him, but he pitched into the 7th inning and only allowed 7 base runners. That's a solid start. Not to mention, Houston's the best home lineup in baseball this year, and they've been red hot. So that's a solid start there. Pretty much other than that June 19th road start in Atlanta, Skubal's been the man. Got to go back to May 22nd in Kansas City to find the last time he was really got to. Now, he does have better numbers against lefty bats. 215 WOBA and an 080 whip against lefties. You can see against righties, it's up at a 264 097. Not that that's bad, just worse against his numbers versus lefties. And the reason I'm bringing that up, Twins are projected to have 9 righties in the lineup. So he might be pitching against 9 righties here. Now, he's a lefty starter, so he's used to pitching against very righty-heavy lineups. But 9 is definitely something to take note of. As far as his pitch mix, his main 2 pitches, fastball, changeup, Twins excellent hitting the fastball, one of the best lineups in baseball, but they've struggled against the changeup, so kind of take it or leave it. Overall on this side, I mean, it's tough to fade Skubal, but I do think the Twins will be able to get a run or 2 across on him. They've been crushing lefty starters like we talked about, so I expect the Twins to get at least 1 or 2 off them. As far as the bullpen battle, got to give the edge to Minnesota. In the last 30 days, the Twins are definitely an above-average bullpen, and the Tigers are definitely a below-average bullpen. And offensively, against bullpens, edge goes to the Twins again. Not that the Twins have even been great in the late innings. They're actually cooling off, but Tigers have been the worst lineup in baseball in the late innings, and it's not close. They are dead last in the league in the last 30 days, the last 14 days, the last 7 days. This Tigers team just doesn't score runs in the late innings. As far as betting this game, I'm on the Twins here. Took the money line, got it at plus 102. I mean, I don't love the idea of fading Skubal, but this Tigers lineup is so bad. Twins have the advantage in every other aspect of this baseball game other than the starting pitcher. And even if Skubal deals, even if Skubal throws 6 shutout innings, which, by the way, is an if, because the Twins have been tattooing lefty starters, but even if Skubal throws 6 shutout innings, the score might be 0-0 heading into the 7th, and I'd be sitting with the bullpen advantage comfortable in my Twins moneyline bet. So, yeah, I'm on the Twins. Already bet it. Next up, we got Padres on the road in Arlington. Rangers are short home favorites here, minus 115. Total sitting at 8. We got Dylan Cease pitching for San Diego. Eovaldi's on the mound for the Rangers. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a slight lean on the Padres through 5 innings and final score 2.52 to 2.3, 4.43 to 4.24. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the Padres bats, and they've definitely been hitting. In the last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup. Same goes for the last 14 days, the last 7 days. San Diego's been hot. Now, to be fair, a lot of their damage has come at home. On the season, they're a top 10 lineup on the road, but in the last 30 days, they're actually closer to a bottom 10. But if you look at the last 14 days, they do seem to be getting it going on the road. And they're definitely hitting right-handed pitching. They're actually one of the hottest lineups in baseball against righties. In the last 30 days against righties, they're second in WRC+, second in OPS, second in WOBA. The last 9 righty starters to pitch against the Padres, 6.38 ERA and a 1.42 whip. So 9 righty starters. We're talking about a solid sample size here. Padres have been hitting up almost every righty starter they see. And if you pull up the game logs, you can find 2 righties that were able to give them problems. Winkowski, weirdly enough, that was on June 30th. And then back on June 23rd, they actually struggled to get to Tobias Myers, who's actually been really good, by the way. But other than those 2, I mean, they crushed Tanner Houck, who's having a career year. They hit up Pivetta bad. Before that, they crushed Colin Rea, who's having a good year, and then crushed Bryce Wilson as well. So, yeah, this Padres lineup definitely getting some runs across against righty starters. So, will they get to Eovaldi? I mean, on the season, he's got great numbers, 3.45 ERA, 1.16 whip. Last 3 starts, though, 6.19 ERA and a 1.44. Good news is his struggles have come on the road. On the season at home, Eovaldi's got a 2.22 ERA and an 0.92 whip. Same goes for the last 5 home starts, the last 2 home starts. He's been much better at home in Arlington. But when you look at his game logs, who has he pitched against at home? You can see he went on the road to Milwaukee, got hit up. Before that, pitched well against the Royals, but the Royals were in the middle of that cold streak, and the Royals haven't been a dangerous lineup on the road all year. Before that, got hit up on the road in Seattle, bad. Then before that, yeah, he pitched a great game, but it was against the Giants. Giants are a bottom 5 lineup against right-handed pitching. Padres are second in the last 30 days. Before that, another home start, Arizona, a lineup that can definitely hit righties, gave up 5 hits and 2 earned runs in just 3 innings. So Eovaldi, yeah, he's got great great numbers at home, but I think it's a result of pitching against some bad lineups at home. I think the Padres are going to get to him based on these numbers here. And if you look at his splits against top 10 and bottom 10 lineups, it kind of tells the story. Against bottom 10 lineups versus righties, Eovaldi's absolutely dealt 1.19 ERA and an 0.88 WHIP. But look at his numbers when he pitches against top 10 lineups, which the Padres definitely are. They're actually second, like I said, in the last 30 days. 6.92 ERA and a 1.54 WHIP. So when Eovaldi has seen top 10 lineups, they've exposed him a little bit, and the pitch mix numbers don't do him any favors. His main pitches are the four-seam fastball and the splitter. Padres are 9th and 5th against those two pitches. So like I said, I'm going to say it again. I think the Padres are going to get to Eovaldi. On the other side, we got the Rangers bats, and are they starting to come to life a little bit? I mean, in the last 30 days, they are a bottom 5 lineup, 26th, 26th, and 25th. But look at their numbers in the last 14 days and the last 7 days. Looking much better, looking like an average lineup, which for the Rangers is huge this year because they've been so bad. Their numbers at home, kind of the same thing. In the last 30 days, bottom 7 lineup at home. In the last 14 days, much better than that. So finally, some decent looking offensive numbers from the Rangers. But then we look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, and it goes right back to shit. In the last 30 days, this is arguably the worst lineup in baseball against righties. And if you look at the last 14 days and the last 7 days, it doesn't really get much better than that. So the Rangers are not getting to righties. And when you look at their numbers against righty starters specifically, it actually gets even worse. The last 6 righty starters to pitch against the Rangers, 1.71 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. So righty starters are having zero problems pitching against this Rangers team. And if you look at the game logs, Albert Suarez, 6 shutout innings, just 3 hits. Corbin Burns, 7 innings, 1 earned run. Bryce Wilson, 6 shutout innings. Bryce Wilson is getting tattooed by everybody except the Rangers. Freddie Peralta, who's been struggling this year, he was able to go 5 innings pitched, just 2 earned runs. Got to go back to June 23rd. They got to Alec Marsh. But then right before that, Michael Wacha, who had been hurt for a while, he pitched a great game against the Rangers. So the Rangers against righty starters has just been a nightmare. And now they're going to try to hit off Dylan Cease. I mean, the good news for the Rangers is they had no problem hitting off this dude last year. He made 2 starts against the Rangers in 2023, made it just 7 2/3 innings pitched, a 10.57 ERA, a 2.22 WHIP. So the Rangers gave Cease a lot of problems last year, but I think we all know this year's Rangers line, the 2024 Rangers lineup is certainly not the 2023 Rangers lineup. As far as Cease's numbers on the year, he's been solid. 3.84 ERA, 1.06 WHIP, 3.22 expected FIP. You'll take those. He's been good. On the last 5 starts, slightly higher than that. And if you isolate it to just his road starts, yeah, in his last 5 road starts, he does have a 6.23 ERA. Last 2 road starts, 9.31. So yeah, he's been better at home in San Diego. But when you pull up the game logs and actually look, it's really just one start that's really skewing the numbers here. On the road at Citi Field, the Mets crushed him. 10 base runners and 7 earned runs in less than 4 innings of work. The 2 road starts before that, yeah, he did give up runs, but on the road in LA, the Angels scored 3 earned runs. They had just 5 base runners in 6 innings. That's a solid start. I mean, if you only allow 5 base runners in 6 innings, you're going to be giving up less than 3 runs. So that's a solid start. And then before that, same thing. On the road in Kansas City, who at the time was actually hitting, this is back on May 31st, 5 1/3 innings pitched. He gave up 3 runs, but just 6 base runners. So again, that's a solid start. So it's really just one terrible road start against the Mets that's kind of skewing the numbers. The Brewers got to him too on June 21st, but that was at home. His last start, he was almost perfect. 7 shutout innings, just 3 base runners. If you're looking to back the Rangers, you can look at the pitch mix numbers. Cease throws the slider a lot. 46.9% of his pitches are sliders. The Rangers actually have been hitting the slider. 10th in the last 30 days. His other main pitch is the 4-seam fastball, though, and the Rangers have been terrible hitting the fastball all season, so kind of a give and take there. As far as the bullpen matchup, weirdly, you have to give the edge to the Rangers here, which is crazy. If we were having this conversation 3 weeks ago, I would say you're nuts because the Rangers bullpen was so bad and the Padres bullpen was dealing. But if you look at the last 14 days, the last 30 days, edge goes to Texas. Rangers bullpen is looking pretty average. Padres bullpen has completely fallen off. And offensively against bullpens, again, same thing. It's actually kind of even. If you look at the last 14 days, 10th, 10th, 11th, 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 10th. So these two offenses have been pretty even in the late innings. So I'd call this a coin flip, toss-up in the late innings. As far as betting this game, I am on the Padres. I took San Diego on the money line. Not overly crazy about it, but I think I'm on the right side here. Eovaldi really hasn't impressed me recently, and I think his home splits are a little bit of a mirage based on the fact that he's seen some really bad lineups in his home starts. Padres lineup is red hot, one of the best lineups in baseball against right-handed pitching. The Rangers have been terrible against righties themselves, so I think Dylan Cease can definitely deal. I'm a little worried about the Padres bullpen. They've been slumping, but at minus 105, I think this is the right side to be on. Padres money line. Next up is Phillies Cubs, but I'm skipping this one. Don't have a ton of data in on Mercado, who's scheduled to be pitching for the Phillies. Also, Wes Neski making the start for the Cubs, so I'm just going to skip this one, which brings us right along to Tampa, Kansas City. Royals are short home favorites here, minus 120. Total sitting at 9. Zach Littell pitching for the Rays. Brady Singer on the mound for the Royals. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got to lean on Kansas City through the first 5, 3.16 to 2.45. Slightly in on Kansas City final score as well, 5.06 to 4.64. So before we get into this matchup, let's look at some ROI numbers. Kansas City definitely the more profitable team this year. ROI is down to a plus 8.15% on the season, though. This was up close to 20 a few weeks back. So Royals definitely been in a little bit of a tailspin. Maybe riding the ship, though. You can see a plus 45.8% ROI in the last 5 games. Tampa definitely not profitable on the season, but they've turned it around. In the last 10 games, if you've been betting Tampa, you've been cashing. And it's important to take note that most of the Rays' struggles this year have come at home at the Trop. They're actually a profitable road team, plus 2.4% on the season on the road. Last 10 games, last 5 games, definitely profitable. We're talking about the Royals at home, though, which has been a cash cow this whole season. Looked like they were cooling off there for a second, then maybe not. We'll have to take a look at the numbers and see. Speaking of which, let's look at the Rays' bats. Last 30 days, 13th, 14th, and 14th. Last 14 days, last 7 days, the Tampa Bay Rays flirting with the idea of being a top 10 lineup, which sounds crazy to even say after how bad they looked about a month and a half ago. As far as the numbers on the road, Tampa in the last 30 days is a top 5 road lineup. Yeah, the Rays are coming to life against right-handed pitching, looking pretty average in the last 30 days, 14th, 19th, and 17th, looking like a top 10 lineup against righties in the last 14 days. Now, when you look at their numbers against righty starters, though, the last 6 righty starters that pitch against Tampa, 2.62 ERA and a 1.02 WHIP. So they haven't been getting to righty starters, but when you pull up the game logs, it makes some sense. Jake Irvin has been almost unhittable. George Kirby has been almost unhittable. Before that was Castillo, and they hit the shit out of Castillo. 9 base runners and 4 earned runs and 5 1/3. They got to Brian Wu, 5 base runners in a run and just 3 innings of work. Then before that, they didn't get to Paul Skeens, but who is getting to Paul Skeens? And before that, they didn't get to Jarrett Jones, another dominant righty who's having a great year. So yeah, the Rays' numbers against righty starters don't look great in the last handful of them, but look who they've seen. They've had quite the gauntlet of righty starters, and if you look at all their other hitting metrics, I think the Rays' bats are coming around. Now they're matched up against Brady Singer, who's having a great year. 3.12 ERA, 1.18 WHIP on the season. Last 3 starts, 2.45 ERA, 0.98 WHIP. His numbers at home, great, just like they were last year. He was pretty much a bet-on pitcher at home last year. Not quite as good as they were last year, but 2.80 ERA, 0.99 WHIP. Last 6 home starts, last 3 home starts, numbers look solid for Brady Singer. Here are his game logs. Home against the Marlins, dominated the Texas Rangers in Arlington, which isn't much of an accomplishment this year, although Texas seems to be waking up as well. Struggled a little bit against the Dodgers, but on the road in Dodger Stadium, that's a solid start. Before that, he did get rocked by the Yankees, and he did get rocked by Cleveland. Those are two, top 5 lineups, especially a few weeks ago when the Yankees were hitting. And before that, we get to the Rays start. On the road in Tampa, May 25th, 5 innings pitched, just 1 earned run, 6 base runners. That's a great start. It's important to take note that this was over a month ago, when the Rays were terrible, and it was at home. The Rays haven't been hitting at the Trop all year. I think it's important to take note of those two things, because now they're in Kansas City. The Rays' top 5 lineup, we just pointed it out, on the road in the last 30 days. They're also waking up against right-handed pitching, and they're going to have a bunch of lefties in the lineup, which could be a problem for Brady Singer. Brady Singer's numbers against lefties: 375 WOBA, 159 WHIP. Really struggled against lefty bats. Tampa's scheduled to have 5 of them in the lineup for this one, so that could be a problem. Also, his pitch mix. His main pitch is the slider. He throws it 44.6% of the time. The Rays are the 3rd best lineup in baseball in the last 30 days against sliders. So I like Tampa to get the Brady Singer in this one. Now, if you are looking to back the Royals, You can point at the fact that Brady Singer has had no problem pitching against Tampa in the past. His last 4 starts against the Rays, this dates back to 2022. He's 1-0 with a 2.88 ERA and a 1.08 whip. So he's pitched great against Tampa. And the current Rays bats, through 82 career plate appearances, are hitting just 137 with a 410 OPS off of Singer. So if you are looking to back Kansas City, you are loving those 2 graphics. Brady Singer has pitched great against the Rays, and the current Rays hitters have terrible lifetime numbers against them. But personally, I think this Tampa lineup's heating up. I trust them on the road. I think the Rays get to Brady Singer in this one, which brings us to the other side, the Kansas City bats. And is the slump over? That's the question we need answered. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 10 lineup, even close to a bottom 5 lineup in the last 14 days. Look at the last 7. Top 10 lineup, which is where they were hanging out at home for most of the season. Speaking of which, let's pull up their numbers at home. Top 10, maybe even a top 5 home lineup this year. Last 30 days, they were back at average. Have they turned things around? That's what we need answered. Their numbers against right-handed pitching, kind of similar. I mean, the last 30 days, borderline bottom 10 lineup against righties. But look at the last 7 days. Are the Royals bats waking up again? The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Royals, 4.66 ERA, 1.29 whip. Decent numbers. Obviously, if we brought in the sample size to the last 11 righty starters, 2.95 and a 1.03 whip. So yeah, that includes the hitting slump they were in. Now, when we pull up the game logs of righty starters against the Royals, this is where I'm not really sold that the Kansas City bats are back yet. They crushed Tristan McKenzie. They crushed Roddery Munoz. Everyone's crushing those 2 guys this year. Other than that, they didn't get to Tanner Bybee. They didn't get to Ben Lively. They didn't get to Yanni Chirinos. They didn't get to Max Scherzer. I mean, is hitting up Tristan McKenzie and Roddery Munoz enough for you to declare this lineup out of the slump? Personally, I don't think it is. They're going to need to hit up a pitcher that I consider decent, which brings us to the question, do we consider Zach Littell decent? Well, his numbers on the year are decent. 4.17 ERA and a 1.36 whip. Last 8 starts, 5.40 ERA. Last 3 starts, 7.50 with a 1.75 whip. So Zach Littell definitely trending in the wrong direction here, and his numbers on the road are even worse. 5.13 ERA on the road this year. His last 5 road starts, 6.38 ERA, 1.83 whip, and his last 2 road starts even worse than that. But when you pull up his game logs, I'm not saying it absolves him of the blame, but it certainly becomes more understandable. On the road in Minnesota, the Twins have been red hot in the last month. By the way, he pitched fine in that game. 7 base runners, 2 earned runs, and 5 innings pitched. So he didn't even get hit up on the road in Minnesota. His road start before that was Atlanta. His road start before that was Baltimore, when he pitched against Baltimore back-to-back starts. So, yeah, we can point at Zach Littell's recent road starts and be like, wow, this guy's trash. When you actually look at it, it's not that bad. I mean, he just got really crushed in Atlanta. 6 earned runs and 8 hits in just 2 innings. That's going to skew the shit out of the numbers. One thing I like for Zach Littell here is he's not a walk guy. Just a 4.3% walk rate on the year. The Royals have actually really struggled against righties that don't walk guys. On the season, against righties with a walk rate below 6%, they're 24th and 27th. So Zach Littell, not a guy who struggles with his command, definitely works in his favor here. The pitch mix numbers, though, favor Kansas City. His 2 main pitches are the slider, the splitter. He also throws the 4-seam fastball. Kansas City 11th and 6th against those main 2. They're 26th against the 4-seam fastball, but pitch mix numbers definitely favorable for the Royals. As a whole, I'm willing to call the bluff on the Royals bats one last time. If they hit up Littell, I'll officially declare that lineup back. But hitting Tristan McKenzie and Roddery Munoz is not enough for me. As far as the bullpen matchup, I mean, I guess slight edge to the Rays because their bullpen is better, but if you look at recent production, they've pretty much been even. I mean, the last 30 days, the Rays bullpen 19th in ERA, 14th in WOBA. Royals are 17th and 21st. So as far as production, they're actually pretty close. I just think we all know that the Rays have better arms in the bullpen. So pretty much even, maybe a slight edge towards Tampa. Offensively against bullpens, got to give the edge to Tampa. The Rays have been hitting in the late innings. This is a top 10 lineup. Last 30 days, last 14 days, last 7 days. Meanwhile, the Royals, last 30 days, pretty average. Last 14 days, actually bottom 10 lineup in the late innings. So a slight edge towards the Rays in the late innings. As far as betting this game, it would only be Tampa for me here. The problem is I was hoping to get like a plus 120. Sitting at plus 100, plus 102. That's just not enough of a payout for me to get involved here. So I'm going to say raise or pass. I'm going to need at least plus 110, plus 115 to consider it. Now, if you're looking for a sneaky Dinger Tuesday pick here, Kyle Isbell, hear me out. He's on the Royals. He's projected to bat 9th in the lineup. I don't even know who this is.
He's third on the team in expected WOBA with a 6.3% barrel rate against righties with Zach Littell's pitch mix. He's also been seeing the ball well. In his last 3 games, 4 of 9 with a triple and a homer. The man's hot, swinging a hot bat. I don't know what the odds are going to be. As you guys know, I'm not a big player prop guy, but Kyle Isbell, I'm going to be betting it. Next up is Colorado, Milwaukee. I'm skipping this one. Dallas Keuchel is pitching, and like I said, when he made his first start of the season, I didn't even know he was still an active professional baseball player, so I don't think I'm going to place a bet in that one. It'll be a pass. Next up, after that, Baltimore on the road in Seattle. Good game here. This one close to a pick 'em. It looks like Seattle's short home dogs here, -105. Total sitting at 7. Good pitching matchup, too. Grayson Rodriguez on the mound for Baltimore. George Kirby pitching for the Mariners. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got to lean on Baltimore through 5 innings, 2.54 to 2.13. Lean on Baltimore final score as well, 4.52 to 3.82. Before we get into this one, let's look at the ROI numbers. Both of these teams have turned a profit this year. Baltimore plus 8.9% on the season. Seattle plus 0.8%, so both in the green. Seattle very slightly, though. But the thing is, this game is in Seattle, which is huge, because the Mariners have been one of the most profitable home teams in baseball, plus 18.1% ROI on the season at home. Baltimore's been profitable on the road, but not as profitable as the Mariners at home. So the fact that this game's in Seattle is huge. Let's get into the matchup, and we'll start with the Baltimore bats. And obviously, we know we're looking at an elite lineup here. I mean, all 2s across the board. If it wasn't for Grimace, these would be all 1s. Baltimore is the hottest team in baseball, the hottest lineup in baseball, not named the New York Mets. If we take a look at their numbers specifically on the road, same thing. 2s across the board on the season. This is the 3rd best road lineup in baseball. Baltimore is as elite as it gets offensively. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, last 30 days, 1s across the board. First in WRC+, first in OPS, first in WOBA. Top 5 last 14 days, last 7 days as well. It's Baltimore. We know what it is. Now, when we look at their numbers against righty starters, though, check this out. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against Baltimore, 6.15 ERA and a 1.44 whip. So you're looking at those and you're thinking, oh, so they're getting to righty starters. Kind of. Look at the game logs. Yeah, they got to Michael Lorenzen on June 29th. Yeah, they crushed John Gray on June 27th. And yes, they crushed Luis Gil back on June 20th. But look at the other 4 righty starters on this list. They didn't get to Max Scherzer. They didn't get to Carlos Carrasco. They didn't get to Tanner Bybee. And they didn't get to Ronel Blanco. In fact, all 4 of those guys were able to pitch great games against Baltimore. So, yeah, we've seen instances where they've crushed righty starters recently, but we've also seen 4 righty starters pitch great games against this Orioles lineup recently. So, kind of hit or miss there when it comes to righty starters against the O's. And we're talking about one of the hottest righty starters in baseball here. George Kirby has been excellent. That being said, his career numbers against Baltimore, not so excellent. He's made 5 career starts against the O's. He's 1-3 with a 4.02 ERA. 109 whip is great, though. So he's 1-3. 4.02 ERA obviously could be better. 109 whip is solid. So it sounds like he just didn't get the run support in those games, if we're being honest. Now, I mentioned that George Kirby's been excellent. Look at these numbers. On the season, 3.35 ERA, 0.97 whip, and he just keeps getting better as the season progresses. Look at his numbers on his last 3 starts. 1.42 ERA, 0.74 whip. Look at his numbers at home. On the season, 2.34 ERA, 0.85 whip. In his last 5 home starts, 0.84 ERA and an 0.69 whip. He's been almost untouchable at home recently. Here are his game logs, and I mean, when's the last time George Kirby struggled? Got to go back a month and a half ago on the road in Washington. We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elite starts in a row. As far as red hot starting pitchers, I mean, you got to look George Kirby, and then you got to look at his teammate, Logan Gilbert. These guys have been dominant. Now, if you're looking to back Baltimore here, you can look at George Kirby's splits versus top 10 and bottom 10 lineups. Against bottom 10 lineups, he's been excellent, 2.83 ERA and an even 1 whip. Against top 10 lineups, I mean, he's still been good, but his ERA is up at a 4.30. Whip is still 104, though. So, I mean, the numbers are still great, just not quite as good as his numbers against bottom 10 lineups. So there's something. We know Baltimore's most definitely a top 10 lineup. Also, George Kirby has shown us he can be vulnerable to lefty bats. Baltimore not quite as lefty heavy as they used to be, though. In fact, there's only 4 lefties projected to be in the lineup for the O's in this one. I'm pretty sure last year the Orioles were starting 6-7 lefties against righty starters. It's not the case this year. Now, 3 of their first 5 hitters are lefties, so they have some big lefty bats up there in the lineup. But as a whole, only 4 lefties in the lineup for Baltimore, which is a good sign for George Kirby. Now, his pitch mix numbers could be a concern, though.
He throws a four-seam fastball and the sinker. In the last 30 days, Baltimore 3rd and 6th against those two pitches. So you like the look of that if you're looking to back the O's. But personally, George Kirby at home's been almost untouchable. We've seen Baltimore blank on several righty starters, none of them as good as George Kirby. So I think he'll pitch fine. I think George Kirby should pitch a good game here. But now we get to the other side. Will he get run support? And these numbers are screaming absolutely not. On the last 30 days, the Mariners are a bottom 10 lineup, 17th, 24th, and 22nd. Seems like they're trending in the wrong direction, too. In the last 7 days, this is a bottom 3 lineup in baseball. And as far as their numbers at home, pretty much equally as shitty. On the season, this is a bottom 10, maybe even a bottom 5 lineup at home. Last 30 days, last 14 days, things don't even seem to be getting better for Seattle. Their numbers against right-handed pitching, same thing. In the last 30 days, they actually look okay, pretty average, but look at the last 14 days, the last 7 days. This is looking terrible for the Mariners' bats against righties. The last 7, check this out, the last 7 righty starters to pitch against Seattle, 1.60 ERA and an 0.86 whip. So the last 7 righty starters to pitch against this team blanked them, and when you pull up the game logs, you can see who the 7 are. Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober, Pepio, Zach Littell, Taj Bradley, Tanner Bybee. I mean, these aren't bad names, but there's only a couple elite names on there, and pretty much only one elite. Actually, Tanner Bybee, you might be able to consider him elite this year. He's been great, but these are not names that should just be shutting your lineup down. Seattle couldn't touch any of these guys. So will they be able to get to G-Rod? Well, Grayson Rodriguez did already pitch against the Mariners this year. It was on May 18th. 6 innings, 1 hit. No runs, 6 shutout innings, just 1 hit. So he had no problems with this Mariners lineup last month, or I guess that was a month and a half ago now. That being said, Grayson Rodriguez definitely trending in the wrong direction a bit. On the season, the numbers look solid. 3.72 ERA, 1.24 whip. But you look at the last 6 starts, the last 3 starts. Last 3 starts, he's got a 5.21 ERA. So trending in the wrong direction. And his numbers on the road could be a concern here. On the road this season, he's got a 5.35 ERA. Last 4 road starts, 4.84. Last 2 road starts, 7.59. So the fact that this game's in Seattle could be significant for Grayson Rodriguez. But when you look at his game logs, you see that it really was just one bad start. On the road in Houston, they crushed him. I mean, other than that, yeah, Boston got to him a little bit on May 28th, but he pitched fine on the road in Tampa, and he was fine on the road in Toronto. So I'm willing to throw a lot of those road splits out, considering there's one terrible Houston Astros road start on June 21st that's skewing all the numbers. Grayson Rodriguez overall is having a solid season. Now, here's something that could be a concern for Grayson Rodriguez, and this is weird. He's actually really struggled against bad lineups. On the season, he's thrown 23 2/3 innings pitched against top 10 lineups versus righties. It's been okay. 4.18 ERA and a 1.44 whip. His numbers against bottom 10 lineups are actually worse. 4.98 ERA and a 1.52 whip against bottom 10 lineups. Mariners are definitely a bottom 10 lineup against righties right now. So he's actually struggled against bad lineups, which is kind of weird. But just when you start thinking, oh, well, maybe the Seattle Bats will snap out of the slump here and hit him, then we look at some other splits that just destroy those chances. First of all, Grayson Rodriguez is dominant against lefty bats. 258 WOBA and a 104 whip compared to a 363 and a 145 against righties. The Mariners are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lefties in the lineup, including 4 of their first 5 hitters. Mariners are a very lefty-heavy lineup. Grayson Rodriguez dominant numbers against lefties. So you love the look of that if you're on Baltimore. Also, his pitch mix. His 3 main pitches, the 4-seam fastball, the changeup, and the slider. Mariners do have okay numbers against the fastball, and that is his main pitch. But his secondary pitches, the changeup and the slider, Mariners 30th and 26th in the last 30 days against those 2 pitches. So, look, I don't have a ton of faith in this Mariners bats, and if I'm being honest, you shouldn't either. I'm sure Grayson Rodriguez is going to pitch fine. I think there's a chance we're looking at a 0-0 game after 5 innings, which probably should look at the first 5 under. But the total's at 7. I haven't even looked at it yet, but I bet that first 5 unders at 3.5, which I probably won't touch. As far as the bullpen matchup, kind of tough to call. So in the last 30 days, you'd have to say Baltimore's bullpen has been better, right? But in the last 14 days, Baltimore's bullpen's really struggled. They're actually a bottom 10 bullpen in the last 2 weeks. But the Mariners' bullpen is also trending in the wrong direction, so I mean, I guess Baltimore's bullpen is slightly better, but according to these numbers, it's pretty much even. Offensively against bullpens, though, you got to go Baltimore. This has been one of the best lineups in baseball in the last 30 days in the late innings. Mariners, not so much. So in the late innings, you give the edge to Baltimore, but
don't have a ton of faith in the O's bullpen right now. We know they're a good unit, but they haven't looked like it recently. As far as betting this one, I mean, I guess you'd have to go Baltimore here, but there's no way I'm actually going to do it. I really think George Kirby could throw a gem. The Mariners have been so good at home this year. If you've been fading the Mariners at home, you're down a fortune. I would imagine Baltimore's probably going to be one of the most public plays on the board for this one. So I guess I'll say Baltimore pass, under pass. I was thinking about throwing down a bet for fun here. I was going to take the 1-0 exact score on either side. Baltimore to win 1-0 was plus 5,000. Mariners was like plus 6,500. I was thinking about throwing a few dollars, just betting the final score to be 1-0. It was just going to be for fun, though. I do think it's super low scoring. Also, you could look at a hitting under. You can get both Adley Rutschman and Julio Rodriguez under 1.5 HRR. That's hits, runs, and RBIs at basically a pick 'em, minus 110 and minus 1212 or something. Both have weaker expected WOBA and barrel numbers against their respective opposing starters. So I would go somewhere like that, but good chance I don't place a bet on this game.
Next up, we got the Angels out in Oakland to play the A's. This one pretty close to a pick'em. Angels very short dogs here. Oakland sitting at minus 108. Totals at 8. We got Jose Soriano on the mound for the Angels. Mitch Spence pitching for Oakland. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on the Angels after 5 innings. 2.52 to 2.16. Slight lean on the Angels final score as well. 4.57 to 4.43. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Angels creeping back up close to 0. Just a minus 3.15% ROI for the Angels. You would think it'd be way worse than that. The Angels have been turning a profit recently. If you've been betting the Angels, you've been cashing out. In the last 10 games, they got a plus 44.3% ROI. Meanwhile, Oakland is the opposite. On the season, minus 13.83%. Last 10 games, last 5 games, you've been taking a bath if you've been betting the A's. But the fact that this game's in Oakland is significant because they've been much more profitable at home. On the season, minus 4.6% ROI at home. Last 10 games, last 5 games, actually somewhat close to 0. But the Angels have been profitable on the road. The Angels have almost a plus 7% ROI on the road. So if you've been betting the Angels on the road this season, you're making money. So let's get into the matchup, and we'll start with the Angels bats. I mean, this Angels lineup, I guess they're heating up. In the last 30 days, 19th in WRC+, 15th in OPS, 15th in WOBA. Look at the last 7 days. Now, 7 days is an insanely small sample size, but this is a top 5 lineup in the last 7 days. Their numbers on the road, though, not great. They've done most of this recent damage at home. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 10 road lineup. On the season, they're pretty average. In fact, they've actually been better on the road this year, hitting the ball. For the most part, I mean, teams recently, it's been the opposite. But for the most part, the Angels have been better on the road, as we could see by looking at their ROI numbers. As far as against right-handed pitching, kind of the same deal here. In the last 30 days, this is an average lineup against righties. But look at the last 7 days, third, and third. Angels have some nice-looking numbers against righties recently, and it gets weirder when you pull up their numbers against righty starters. It's not even good. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Angels, 3.54 ERA and a 1.18 WHIP. So they haven't even gotten to righty starters. When you look at the game logs, didn't get to Casey Mize, who's been really struggling this year. Didn't really get to Reese Olson. 8 base runners in 6 innings. Didn't really get to him. Didn't get to Kenta Maeda, who's been really bad this year. But then before that, they absolutely smoked Jack Flaherty, who's having a career season. And then 2 starts before that, Mitch Spence, that one's significant because that's who they're seeing in this one, crushed him. 5 1/3 innings pitched, 8 hits, 6 earned runs. So definitely not an encouraging sign for Oakland, knowing their guy just pitched against the Angels and got absolutely crushed. Speaking of Mitch Spence, on the season, his numbers are solid. 4.40 ERA, 1.33 WHIP, but he's trending in the wrong direction. Last 5 starts, 5.40 ERA. Last 3 starts, 6.35 ERA. The good news is most of that damage has come on the road. His numbers at home are good. 4.09 ERA and a 1.36 WHIP at home on the season. Last 2 home starts, 2.77 and an 0.92. So he's been good in his last couple home starts. And you can see here, home Kansas City, June 20th, 6 innings pitched, 7 base runners, 2 earned runs. Great start. Before that, home Toronto, 7 innings pitched, just 5 hits, no walks, 2 earned runs. Great start. Home start before that, though, Seattle rocked them. 10 base runners and 4 earned runs in 6 innings pitched. And the home start before that, the Rockies hit them up pretty badly. So, yeah, we got a couple good home starts in a row, but the Angels just crushed them. His last road start was a disaster, and the 2 home starts before the last 2 were bad. So, as a whole, I would say those numbers point to Mitch Spence probably getting hit up. He also has some really shaky-looking splits against lefty bats. 3.48 WOBA against lefties compared to a 2.97 against righties.
The Angels are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, just 4 lefties in the lineup. I thought it was 5. It's only 4, but 3 of their first 4 hitters are lefties. So some of the main pieces of the Angels lineup are lefties. So those lefty splits definitely not a great sign. As far as the pitch mix, not much to go by. He throws the cutter and the slider. Those are his 2 main pitches. Angels average looking numbers against those pitches, 19th and 13th in the last 30. Overall, as far as making a prediction on this side, I mean, we're talking about a starting pitcher that just pitched against this lineup 6 days ago and got rocked. So it's hard to have a ton of faith in them. On the other side, we got the Oakland Bats, and they've been bad. In the last 30 days, this is definitely a bottom 5 lineup. Last 14 days, 18th, 21st, 20th, so maybe a little bit better. As far as their numbers at home, though, not good. Earlier in the season, the A's were scoring some runs at home, and on the live show, I had said a few times, like, hey, I can get behind this Oakland lineup at home. Hasn't been the case. In the last 30 days, this is one of the worst home lineups in baseball. 28th in WRC+, 30th in OPS, 30th in WOBA. So they have not been hitting at home recently. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, bad. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5 lineup against righties. Bottom 10 the last 14 days, the last 7 days. They have not been getting to righty starters either. The last 6 righty starters to pitch against Oakland, 1.58 ERA and an 0.73 whip. So they haven't been getting to righty starters at all. And if you pull up the game logs and see which righty starters they've seen, you can see Brandon Pfaadt blanked them. Zach Gallen, 6 shutout innings, just 1 hit. They did get to Slade Ciccone, so they got to Slade. But before that, Griffin Canning, one of his best starts of the year. Before that, Pablo Lopez, 8 shutout innings, 3 base runners. Bailey Ober threw a complete game. So yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in the Oakland lineup right now. Not at home, not against righties, not anywhere. And now they're going to try to hit off Jose Soriano, who's been so dominant. On the season, he's got a 3.39 ERA and a 1.18 whip. Look at his last 6 starts, 277, 103. Last 2 starts, 193 and an even 1. I will say his recent road starts don't look quite as impressive. 3.06 ERA and a 1.14 whip in his last 5 road starts. 3.86 and 1.14 in his last 2 road starts. But his numbers on the road for the season are solid, so it's not like he's struggling on the road or anything. And when we pull up his game logs here, you can see he hasn't pitched in about 3 weeks, which is a concern. He's dealing with, I think he had an ab injury or something to his core. So he was out for 3 weeks. But before he went down, I mean, we're talking about a road start in Arizona. Snakes have been hitting righty starters, and this dude threw 8 innings on the road in the desert. Before that, blanked the Padres, who have been, we just looked at it, in the last 30 days, one of the best lineups in baseball. I think they're second against right-handed pitching. So back-to-back, really impressive starts before dealing with the injury. Now, not really crazy about the idea of putting my money on a guy making his first start in 3 weeks, returning from an injury. But no question, this guy was dominant. He's also got really nice looking splits against bad lineups. On the season against bottom 10 lineups versus righties, he's thrown 18 in the 3rd innings pitched, 2.45 ERA and a 1.15 whip. So he's been dominant in the opportunities he's had against bad lineups. I will say, though, if you're trying to back Oakland here, I have a couple graphics you might like. Number 1, Jose Soriano's actually been vulnerable to righty bats. You can see 326 WOBA and a 136 whip against righties, much worse than his numbers against lefties. Oakland's a righty-heavy lineup. They're projected to have 6 righties in the lineup here, including 5 of their first 7 bats are righties. So there's something if you're looking to back Oakland. They're a lineup loaded with righties against a guy who's better against lefties. Also, pitch mix. Jose Soriano throws the sinker 40% of the time. Oakland surprisingly has decent offensive numbers against the sinker. They're 12th on the season, 13th in the last 30 days. So they've actually been able to hit this pitch. Again, I'm not saying Oakland's going to get to Jose Soriano. I'm just saying there are a couple angles there that support the Oakland Bats if you're looking for them. As far as the bullpen matchup, I mean, if we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, I would say it's not even a discussion. The Angels bullpen is terrible, and the Oakland A's have a solid bullpen. But in the last 30 days, last 14 days, let's say, the Angels bullpen has been on fire. They're actually first in ERA, first in WOBA in the last 14 days, and the Oakland bullpen's been in a tailspin. 14th in ERA, 20th in WOBA. So we know the Oakland bullpen is better, or well, at least we think it is based on what we've seen this season. But recently, that hasn't been the case. The Angels bullpen has been much better, and offensively against bullpens, the Angels have been the best lineup in baseball in the last 7 days. Top 10 in the last 14, top 10 in the last 30. So offensively against bullpen, again, edge goes to the Angels. As far as betting this game, I mean, it's got to be Angels, right? I mean, I would imagine everyone's taking the Angels, which I don't love. But the bullpen's heating up. Lineup might even be heating up. The Oakland Bats have been terrible. I mean, Jose Soriano's a beast. The only thing that might keep me from pulling the trigger on this one is Jose Soriano making his first start back from missing 3 weeks coming off an injury. history. Don't love the idea of that, and that's why I haven't placed this one yet. But I mean, to me, the Angels are the overall better team, and they're playing better baseball, and I have the better starting pitcher. The Angels just absolutely crushed Mitch Spence. It would have to be Angels money line or pass for me here. Last up, we got the D-backs on the road in Dodger Stadium. Dodgers pretty heavily favored here, minus 190, total at 8.5. We got Ryan Nelson pitching for the Snakes. Bobby Thriller on the mound for the Dodgers. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got to lean on the Dodgers after 5 innings, 3.52 to 2.44. Solid lean on the Dodgers' final score as well, 6.16 to 4.33. So let's get into this matchup, but we'll start with the ROI numbers. Pretty dead even. D-backs minus 5.3% on the season, Dodgers minus 5.5%. So these two teams pretty dead even. As far as at home in LA, the Dodgers are even worse, minus 12.2% ROI this year at home. So if you've been betting the Dodgers at home this year, you're taking a bath. Arizona hasn't turned a profit on the road, but they're more profitable than the Dodgers are, minus 4.2%. So let's get into the matchup. We'll start with the Snakes bats. Is this lineup cooling? In the last 30 days, you can see they're a top 10 lineup, but in the last 14 days, the last 7 days, they're definitely in the bottom half of the MLB. As far as their numbers on the road, in the last 30 days, again, 11th, 12th, and 10th, flirting with the top 10 road lineup, but in the last 14 days, back in the bottom 10. So we have to figure out if this lineup is cooling off. When we look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, same story here. In the last 30 days, top 10 lineup versus righties, but last 14 days, last 7 days, definitely look like the Snakes bats are cooling off. I will say they do have solid numbers against righty starters, but this is the last 10. The last 10 righty starters that pitch against them have a 5.88 ERA, so they've gotten to the last 10. But when you look at the game logs, I mean, this lineup couldn't get to Louis Medina. And I should know. I had Arizona minus 1.5 in that game. Thank God they scored some runs late. I was sweating that one. Before that, didn't really get to Woods Richardson. Joe Ryan, they got 4 runs off of, but only 6 base runners in 6 innings. Didn't touch Zach Wheeler. When you get back to mid-June, you could see they were hitting the shit out of righty starters. They rocked Jake Irvin, who's having an excellent year. But recently, I don't know. They seem to be cooling off a bit. I will say the type of pitcher Bobby Miller's been this year is favorable for Arizona. First off, he's got a 6.75 ERA, and Arizona's been the best lineup in baseball against bad righties. Against righty starters when the ERA above 5, they're the best lineup in baseball, first across the board. And also, Bobby Miller's struggling with his command recently. 13.79% walk rate on the year. Against righties with a walk rate above 8%, you could see Arizona much better. They struggle with righties that don't walk guys. Bobby Miller's been having serious walk problems. And speaking of Bobby Miller, let's pull up his numbers, and just, this is not looking like his year, at least not so far. He made 1 start earlier in the year and was excellent, but then he got hurt and came back and just really has been struggling. On his last 4 starts, he's got a 9.64 ERA, 2.14 WHIP. Here are his game logs. I mean, one thing you can point at, he's only made 1 home start, and it was on March 29th. I think it was the first game of the year. Oh, no, they played over in Korea or whatever. So one of their first games of the year, Bobby Miller, 6 shutout innings against the Cardinals. That was his only home start. Then he gets, he pitched a couple in early April, and then he came back in late June. But since that start against the Cardinals, he's been bad. He's been hit up. So if you're looking to back the Dodgers here, you can say, hey, Bobby Miller back at home. It's only his second road start, and his first road start was great. Personally, I think that's razor thin. We're talking about over 3 months ago, and we've seen him really struggle since then. Also, he specifically really struggled against lefty bats, and Arizona's going to have 5 of them, including their first 3 hitters in the lineup. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Jock Peterson, lefty, lefty, lefty. Bobby Miller is a 4.74 WOBA against lefties, 2.14 WHIP against lefties, so that's terrifying. To see those numbers. Also, pitch mix. Bobby Miller throws the 4-seam fastball, the changeup, and the curveball. Arizona second in baseball against 2 of those 3 pitches in the last 30 days. So as much as I'd love to see Bobby Miller get back on track, I'm not sure this is a spot for it. But I will say he made 2 starts against Arizona last year and was excellent. He made 2 starts last year. He was 1-0 with an even 3 ERA. And, well, you know what? 1.42 WHIP. I shouldn't say excellent. He pitched well against Arizona last year. That's probably the better way to describe it. He didn't have problems with his lineup last year. So as far as making a prediction on that side, I mean, good luck. Arizona seems to be cooling off, but Bobby Miller has been so bad that I don't know how you could even trust him. On the other side, we got the Dodgers bats, and they seem to be cooling as well, by the way. In the last 30 days, they're a top 5 lineup. Last 14 days, top 10 lineup. Last 7 days, just below average. So Dodgers seem to be cooling as well. As far as their numbers at home, same exact story. On the season, this is a top 5 home lineup. Last 30 days, top 10 home lineup. Last 14 days, actually bottom 10 home lineup. That's a small sample size, but still you get the point. Numbers against right-handed pitching haven't dropped, though. In the last 30 days, they're a top 10 lineup against righties. Same goes for the last 14, the last 7. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Dodgers have a 5.97 ERA and a 1.47 WHIP. So they've gotten to righty starters. But when you actually look at the game logs, where are the decent names on this list? I mean, they didn't get to Logan Webb. Didn't really get to Fetty. They got 4 runs, but just 6 base runners in 6 innings. Didn't really get to Brady Singer. Didn't really get to Seth Lugo. So, yeah, they got to Chris Flexen, Ryan Feltner, and Cal Quantrill. Well, Cal Quantrill's actually having a decent season. Definitely some questionable. As far as the righty starters they did get to, I haven't seen them get to a good righty starter. How about that? But that brings up the question, is Ryan Nelson a good righty starter? And based on his numbers this year, I guess you have to say no. On the season, he's got a 5.69 ERA and a 1.57 WHIP. Seems to be trending in the wrong direction, too. In his last 4 starts, it's up at 6.30. Last year, we were able to bank on Ryan Nelson pitching on the road. That has not been the case. On the season, on the road this year, 4.64 ERA and 1.39 WHIP, so not even much better than his better than his full season numbers, but not much. His last 2 road starts, 6.10 ERA. When you pull up his game logs, though, you can see the numbers are skewed a bit by a couple really bad starts. The Twins completely crushed this guy. Padres completely crushed this guy. But other than that, I mean, on the road in Washington, great start. White Sox, great start. Home against Giants, great start. Rangers did get to him a little bit, but then before that, 5 scoreless innings against the Dodgers. He actually didn't start that game, though. He came in and that was a long relief appearance, but 5 scoreless innings against the Dodgers. And you know what? That's kind of been the thing. He pitches well against the Dodgers. He's pitched against them 3 times. He's 2-0 with a 1.59 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP. So weirdly enough, the Dodgers have not given Ryan Nelson problems, but matchup-wise, I mean, he really struggles against righty bats. 4.23 WOBA and an even 2 WHIP. That's terrible. The Dodgers are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, only 4 righties in the lineup. I thought it was 5. So only 4 righties in the lineup for the Dodgers. But 3 of the first 5 hitters are righties. So that's not too bad. As far as the pitch mix, he throws the 4-seam fastball 50% of the time. Dodgers have been hitting fastballs, 7th in the last 30 days. But he also throws a cutter, and they've struggled against that pitch. So you know what? Maybe not a terrible terrible matchup for Ryan Nelson here. As far as the bullpens, I mean, you got to give the edge to the Dodgers, and it's not close. Arizona's been so bad. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 3 bullpen. They've been a bottom 5 bullpen all season, and the Dodgers bullpen has been pretty solid. I mean, this is a top 5, top 10 bullpen. Expected FIP numbers indicate they've had some good luck, but still miles better than the Arizona bullpen. Offensively against bullpens, though, I guess Arizona, because the Dodgers seem to be falling off, but I don't know. Kind of a toss-up there. I'd just call it a coin flip. As far as betting this game, I mean, it has to be the Snakes here. I already bet it, actually. So I'm in on the Snakes. I split my money. I took Diamondbacks on the money line and plus 1.5. So I'm in. I'm in on the Snakes. Don't absolutely love it. But the way Bobby Miller's been pitching, the way the Dodgers have been looking offensively, Tosa's been taking Dodgers team total unders and cashing left and right. I mean, I don't know how you could consider the Dodgers at this price, minus 190. So it's only Snakes for me here. I already bet it. I don't overly love. I would actually like it more if it was like plus 130. I got like a plus 160 or plus 150 or something like that, which I don't know. I don't like the price, but I did it. I'm on the Diamondbacks in this one. Like I said earlier, live show 4:00 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go through WNBA first, then we'll go through all 15 games, make our final picks. We got Toast and Modi joining for the show tomorrow. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want my top bets or top bets from anyone on the staff here, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus. Comes with our top bets, access to the Discord, and you can participate in our weekly betting league. Every single week, there's a new winner, $100 and a trophy gets mailed to you. It's been a lot of fun, so head over to the website and sign up if you're interested in that. Let's have ourselves a nice Tuesday night here. Tuesday's always a great baseball night. Remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.